as Leeds United and Marcelo Bielsa say goodbye. And Jesse Marsch is, per Fabrizio Romano and others as well, reputable reporters, that Jesse Marsch is now basically all but set to take over.
I said this the other day, Luis. I said I had a little birdie on my shoulder that I knew that's involved with the club, and they had brought those two things together for the first time, and in a way that, when somebody says something to you and you go, oh, something, and not in this sort of like, I know people who know people like that.
We can't get into it too much, but I will call Heath Romano because before I left for vacation, we had this conversation, and you had a little birdie say a few things saying, because there are already reports, obviously, of the interest that Leeds United have in Brendan Aronson and how he should be coming in the summer. And part of it, of course, is the relationship that he has with Jesse Marsch, of course. And, the pieces were falling, Heath Pierce, and you called it. And look what's happened. Marcelo Bielsa, goodbye. First, before we get into Jesse Marsch, by the way, I've covered Marcelo Bielsa, a lot. I'm going to hopefully write something for the site on Monday. What he did for this club, I don't think will ever be able to be replicated. This is a man that before he takes on any job, the first thing he wants to do is look at the community, look at the city, look at the people, and learn from them, talk to them, try and understand them, what they're all about. And that's exactly what he did. So all these things about, like, why didn't he learn English? He did something that was way more valuable, which is understand the people. And it's something that I can relate to it a lot because of, like, my own journey into England and stuff. Marcelo Bielsa went into Leeds United, a city, a town, a community that's just like, it's not just passionate about the game. It's like it dies with it. It absolutely, and it's been dying to return to the Premier League. And he did it. And he did it into not just in a way that it was like fortuitous or there was this happenstance. He mirrored the city sentiment. And that's something that you just cannot replicate. It's unbelievable what he did. So, Andrea Radrizzani said, this has been the toughest decision I have had to make during my tenure at Leeds United, taking into account all the success Marcelo has had at the club. I mean, Marcelo leaving is massive. Anything on that before we get into Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those sort of moments where he's done so much for the club. He is a legendary figure. He has brought them back to what they were once known as, in terms of not quite to those heights, but brought them back to the Premier League and was willing to sacrifice his name and put himself out there to go on that journey. We've obviously had an opportunity now through documentaries to sort of see the behind the scenes of how that all came together and how things have come together. And so it's hard, and I totally understand the sentiment of it's hard to have a club legend or somebody that's so beloved by the fans make a transition. But again, it has to be, and we're going to get into this Jesse Marsch thing, of the style in which they play, who's going to be the one that takes the baton and carries that forward, right? And they play wide open, which is great, and because it's a high energy, high octane style of football, but now it needs to have a little more structure to, one, secure themselves in the Premier League, but two, set them up for success from a cultural standpoint of, like, what's Leeds in the new generation style of play for the foreseeable future. And I think there's a lot more connective tissue between what he's done and where Jesse Marsch or somebody in the gegenpress type of thing can get them, because you've got the energy there, right? It's not a slow build-up play or methodical. It is high press. It is not high press, but it is wide open. It is high energy. And when you can shift that energy into Jesse Marsch or the Red Bull football style, that's a little more of that gegenpress, it puts your team in better positions to win the ball in higher spots up the field. Use that energy in more efficient ways instead of individual moments or the team, flying all players forward. It just adds a little bit more structure. But first things first, that window is very small to keep them from relegation and then getting results, right? So that's where I worry about any of these things at the point of the season that we're in. We're at the end of February. What does it mean for to change a manager? Manager has to get buy-in from those players, has to earn the respect of those players. Those players have to buy into a system while trying to get results that are looking towards the future.
Yeah, there are a few talking points here that you just brought up there. And thank you for, if you just joined us, we're talking about Leeds United, Marcelo Bielsa, Jesse Marsch, etc., Heath Pierce, LME over here, Weekend Recap. Qué Golazo, send your questions, your comments, especially if you're a Leeds fan. I want to hear from you. But there are two things here regarding Jesse Marsch that you brought up. One is the tactical side of things. I'm very curious about that. And part of that, a sort of, sub-B category part, is, how little of the time he has to rectify these things as well. So, that to me is a major thing. You mentioned the press. I think they're going to be very similar press-wise, but Grace Robertson said a really good point earlier today on Twitter, which is like, he likes his zonal sort of marking, so that's going to be a change. And also, Leeds United fans right now, the thing that they're suffering the most is they're so vulnerable the moment the opponent enters the second half. Yeah. Jesse Marsch has a lot to do there. So the question is here, Heath, just from a tactical perspective, because there's another part that I'm going to bring up in a second, is Marsch setting himself up to be the fall guy if they get relegated? Because I don't know. We're entering March, Heath Pearce, and as you're talking, I just want to look at Leeds United's schedule. I mean, they could be lucky enough, but, Burnley's picking up steam. Watford just grabbed a point. Norwich is Norwich, but then there's, Brentford, Leeds, Everton, Newcastle. I think they're finally doing good things, but you can't completely alienate yourself from the fact that Leeds United could get relegated, and it's Marsch entering a situation right now where he's not going to be able to have enough time to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when you look at how do you take sort of this sinking ship and stabilize it, save the season, and look at next season, you have to, like I just mentioned, have somebody that can transition from what they are now and the vulnerabilities that they have and make it incrementally better. Because they can still score goals, they can still attack, but right now they just seem very low confidence that they need a few of these things that if you were to take another manager and bring him in, that's a bunker manager, and say, hey, we're just going to scrap out and fight results. That's an extreme change from the way in which they're playing now, right? That's a hard buy-in to be able to get results. That to get the buy-in from the players, I think the way in which Jesse Marsch would have to approach it, if he is the selection for manager, is that incremental change that's sort of just saying, hey, we do press, but here's how we're going to press a little bit different. Hey, I know we man mark around the field, which is insane in 2022, but all respect to Bielsa, we're going to switch to a little bit of more zoning, and we're going to actually start to work the tactical side of this. That's just going to make us 10%, or not even 10, 5% better. And if we can be 5% better, that's going to keep us in games longer, like you said, in the second half. It's going to keep us in games longer to be able to get our chances to score and keep us in games longer so that we're not giving up 1, 2, 3, 4 goals in matches. And I think that could be the difference that keeps them in the league now. But then the next part is sort of how do you now go out and build a team that's built to evolve this team from what they were over the last 2 years into the future.
Hey, Heath Pearce, we got breaking news. Jesse Marsch is confirmed per Fabrizio Romano. So please tell me, what do you think now? Jesse Marsch, an American, returns to England as a manager. Bob Bradley was Swansea, Wales. Okay, fair enough. But Jesse Marsch returns. I mean, listen, as an American, how amazing is this to see a head coach in the Premier League of a very good team, by the way, who's just down on their luck right now? What do you make of it? Jesse Marsch is confirmed as the manager of Leeds United.
Yeah, speaking from a purely biased perspective of being an American fan and wanting to see the growth of the sport here, I think it's a huge opportunity. Obviously, we kind of look at it with skeptical eyes in the way that Bob Bradley was sort of the scapegoat and sort of kicked out of Swansea very, very quickly, when I thought that most managers would probably be given a larger window given the context of a team that was already struggling when he got there. But for Jesse Marsch, I think his age, his willingness to adapt to new environments. If you remember in Austria and Germany, the first thing he did is learn German, immerse himself into things. He's a high-intensity coach, demands a lot of his players. I want to see him succeed. Again, it's not a great situation to come into just because of the form of Leeds United. It's a massive club. It's a huge fan base. The expectations are maybe to the point of being unrealistic at this point. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us as a nation. We're continuing to prove ourselves on the field as players, and now we've got a number of players playing in Champions League. They're young. We're going to continue to develop that, but we also need to add in that managerial side because, again, from an inspiration standpoint of players or people becoming better coaches and just the development of that, because better coaches is better players in the U.S. And so, yeah, it's remains to be seen how he does and what kind of support he has and what the purpose is of hiring him. But the fact that he's getting this opportunity, I think, is a huge signal for the U.S. and hopefully he does well with it.
So I have a call to action to everybody watching, listening, especially if you're a Leeds United fan. I'm going to ask Heath Pearce right now. They're not in bottom three. In fact, there was something that Marcelo Bielsa never failed to do with Leeds, never in the bottom three. Whether it was the Championship or the Premier League. Of course, this is only their sophomore season, but will Leeds stay up? Yes or no? Why for yes and for no? Heath Pierce, straight away.
Man, yeah, I think so. There's just too many teams down there that are struggling right now. Obviously, Newcastle's climbed out, but I think Brentford are in poor form. I think Everton are continuing to struggle, finding their feet a little bit. But when I look at Burnley, Watford, and Norwich City, yeah, Watford get a quote-unquote result versus Manchester United, and they've got a little bit of signs of life, but something would have to go really wrong for Leeds not to be able to continue to grab a few points along the way and stay up.
Yeah, so I'm asking that again. Will Leeds stay up? Why for yes and for no? I'm saying yes. I have belief in Jesse Marsch. Listen, the other things obviously is the squad was, just cursed with injuries, Pat Bamford, etc. But I think I just a few little tweaks, Heath Pierce, and I really think that hopefully it can be amended. And let's not forget that they're still, they're not in the bottom three right now. It's Norwich, of course, Watford and Burnley who are still doing their thing and trying to climb out of it. But, they're still Everton, as I mentioned to you 2 weeks ago, I'm still worried about that. Natalie thinks Leeds are staying up. I'm very excited for Jesse Marsch. He's a good man. I just hope that Leeds United fans are patient with him because you're not going to get complete results at the beginning. Obviously, there's no time to waste, but I think he's a good man. He's going to be able to, at the very least, shape you off the ball, especially when opponents are entering your final third. Because I think that was the biggest issue, Heath. Like you had Leeds fullbacks just going full pelt, and then Rafinha was lost right in the middle, and there was nothing to track back to, nothing to cover. Jesse Marsch is going to be better at that.
Yeah, they're definitely injury depleted. They've had a lot of luck go against them, or a lot of things go against them. They've had a lot of bad luck this year. And I think he can step in and give them just that little bit of structure that's going to make a difference, right? They were very comfortable to just play wide open. And there's probably at this point of the season, a number of players going, how is this a way in which we're going to go about getting results? That Jesse Marsch can step in and just give them some structure, give them new parameters, new guidelines, new guardrails for them to play within. And hopefully that's the difference for them, because we've seen their ability to attack. We've seen their ability to score goals, but we also have seen in recent, especially this month, their ability to just give up goals endlessly, like they've neglected. Hey, we should probably get tactical from here on out. And I think Jesse Marsch could provide that, but a huge opportunity for the American manager.